Right, time for Farage. The Reform UK Party conference kicks off tomorrow in Birmingham, in actually exactly the same venue as the Conservative conference will take place in a couple of weeks. And its leader, Nigel Farage, has, of course, made headlines yet again. He's become the highest-earning MP for work that he does outside Parliament.
He's also revealed that he spoke to Donald Trump after the former US president had a second assassination attempt on his life. And Nigel Farage joins us now. So much to talk to you about, as always, Mr. Farage. I always want to get you on our show. Now, look, now the dust has finally settled. You've been disruptive. Kwasi Kwarteng, less than half an hour ago, said, yes, you did damage the Conservative Party in the election. You got your MP seat. But he also said that now that that's done and you open your conference, what is your constructive proposition as a party? We know your destructive proposition and disruptive one, but what's the constructive proposition that you'll be looking to do?
Well, my previous disruption, of course, which took place over many years, was to agitate for a referendum, which I finally got. And hey, we left the European Union and got back our independence. So I'm not about negativity. I'm about shaking things up and changing things. Reform is about winning the next general election from two parties who, frankly, are very little different to each other. Two parties who have no hope, no vision, no optimism for the future of the country. And we're a party that believes in values, the values of family, of community and country. And we think politics needs completely different people who've got real life experience and a vision for where the country needs to go. OK,
I think every party would say it was about values and family values. What is the actual specifics of what reform is going to do?
Aspiration. That's what we believe in. Giving kids from whatever background they come from the opportunity of the best possible education. And yes, bringing back something like the grammar schools. Getting much more technical training for young people. Far too many of them have been conned by Labour and the Conservatives into getting degrees that have proved to be useless and a big debt burden around their necks.
What do you mean? That means you do grants for students instead of loans? I mean, how will any of this be funded?
I would be encouraging people not to go to university unless they are genuinely academic. I think we failed hundreds of thousands of kids by saying you must go to university, when actually they'd have been way better off learning trades and skills.
You know, you've certainly succeeded in your election ambition of nobbling the Tories, and Kwarteng was upfront about admitting that and agreeing with that. But there are only 5 of you. And his partner in crime this morning at our news conversation, Jonathan Ashworth, was saying that history shows that titchy little parties in the House like that just basically vanish without trace. And, you know, frankly, apart from you, I hate to admit this, but I couldn't name a Reform MP or anything that they've said.
I tell you what, I bet most of your viewers couldn't name most of the Labour front bench, could name very few of the Conservative front bench, because they're not particularly memorable or charismatic people. Look, you know, you can talk about history, but history changes. My campaign to leave the European Union was said to be futile, impossible, and I won. I promise you this, there has never been a level of deeper disenchantment about the two so-called main parties. Yes, you're right, we only have 5 seats, despite the fact that each one of us has 800,000 voters behind us, whereas every Labour MP has only 34,000 votes behind them. So, yeah, the first past the post system did mitigate against us, but I've got a sense of real momentum. And what our party is about in Birmingham over the next couple of days, this is a political party coming of age, preparing to fight the English county elections next year, Wales and Scotland after that. A wildly enthusiastic membership that is growing by many hundreds every single week. And I believe we're on the cusp of something new and very exciting.
What are you going to tell the hall? Let's get specific now about immigration. Rwanda, the scheme is dead in the water and it ain't coming back. The Prime Minister was quoted last week as saying that these were, quote, very, very, very early days as far as the Labour government's policies on immigration were concerned, which did fly in the face of what he was saying here actually just before the election when he was campaigning, when he said they had a plan that was up and ready to go. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. What would you do?
They have no plan at all. I mean, 801 people came last Saturday alone, smashing the gangs. Look, we've been trying to smash the drugs gangs for decades and got nowhere. Even if you give people life sentences for trafficking people over the channel, there'll always be somebody else to take the place because the financial rewards are so great.
Nigel, I hate to interrupt you, but I know you're busy and you squeezed us in. What would you do, was Richard's question.
OK, we will not do anything unless we're able to have a serious deterrent. And the deterrent is that if you come here illegally via that route, you will not be allowed to stay. You will be deported, which, by the way, 20 years ago, David Blunkett used to do.
But the figures on that illegal immigration is less than 7% of the people that come here. So what are you going to do with the rest of the other 93%?
I absolutely agree with that, but I was specifically asked what I would do about the illegals.
Yeah.
So, number one, we must leave the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention, which is being used again and again and again by people who should leave this country and some very bad people who should leave this country, but they're able to defend themselves through that legislation. Sovereignty from European institutions needs to be in place. We need to be in control. Now, you're quite right. The bigger problem is the population explosion. Our population's risen by 10 million since Blair came to power, and 6 million of that since the Conservatives came to power. And you wonder why people can't get houses. You wonder why rents have gone up 25% in 4 years. You wonder why people can't get access to GP services, why the motorways are clogged, and why the quality of life for virtually all of us has declined. We have to end mass legal immigration into Britain. It is damaging our quality of life, and now we learn it's making us poorer as well.
Well, speaking of poverty, that's certainly not a personal issue for you, because we know that you earn reportedly over £1 million a year, largely because of your work as a GB television presenter. As you know, the government is looking at basically trying to stop people like you from making money like that by presenting programmes where you interview other politicians. How would you respond?
Well, if you look at my declaration for August for GB News, it's zero. And the reason the big sum went in is it was 3 months' worth of money that came in 1 month. Look, I hadn't intended to stand for Parliament. It was a last-minute decision. I have a company that does a variety of activities. Broadcasting is one of them. I employ people to help me run that company. And yes, there is income that comes in from a variety of sources.
So if you had to pick between being an MP or that money, if those rules came in, which would you pick?
By the way, some years I make money, some years I lose money. Look, my primary objective as a Member of Parliament is to represent the constituents of Clacton in Westminster. My second big job is to build a national party political structure, and that's what this weekend is all about. A constitution for the party, a plan for candidates, for branches, and all of those things. And do I have time to do bits of work on the side? Well, of course I do. I was at my desk at 5 a.m. this morning. I doubt I'll finish until 11 o'clock tonight.
All right.
And if that means I'm a workaholic, and that much of the rest of my life and perhaps family suffer, well, that, I'm afraid, is the way that it is.
Well, then we shan't keep you from your busy day much longer. Just one last question. You're very loyal to Donald Trump. How difficult is that when he says things like Springfield cats and dogs being eaten by immigrants? And how difficult is it when you hear him saying in the last few days that he believes it was divine intervention that saved his life on the golf course?
Is that what he told you on the phone?
I mean, and you spoke to him on the phone. I mean,
I did.
He can be pretty ridiculous, can't he? Isn't that hard for you to stay loyal to?
Whenever Donald Trump makes a comment that is ridiculed, it always turns out to be true. I refer that to the cats and dogs. And I find your line of attacking those who believe that there are sometimes divine interventions, that actually there are people out there that believe in God and believe that sometimes they get spared. I find that line of yours very cynical. Do you know something? I was in an aeroplane that crashed into the ground in 2010. I was smashed to pieces. I shouldn't have survived. I've no idea why I did, but who knows? Maybe even I believe that at times there is a higher intervention that can work in your favour.
I doubt that you would say that God wants you as MP for Clacton in the way that Donald Trump said that he thinks God wants him to be President of the United States. That's my point.
Our
Well,
producer
do you know what? British armies for centuries have fought saying God is on our side.
Right.
People need to believe in something. And if you were facing the prospect of walking out of your front door and someone might shoot you every day, because it's happened twice in the last 2 months, the fact that he has a religious faith maybe is what's giving him the strength to continue.
OK.
No one's knocking that. Nigel.
Thank you,
good
Nigel.
to speak to you.
Thank you.